Welcome to Field Talk, the podcast where I delve into the minds of professionals and uncover their secrets to success. Today's episode is with yet another inspiring creative and personal friend, Roslynn Lemmer, a freelance motion graphics animator and consultant, as well as an accomplished illustrator. Roz and I met a number of years ago while living in Taiwan, teaching English and making creations together for shows and digital distribution. Today, she joins me to discuss her journey in the world of creativity, from her early days as a camera operator and video editor, to her most recent role as an animator and consultant for MAD Courses, an educational tech company focused on sustainability education. Throughout the interview, Roz shares valuable insights into working in teams, bringing ideas from concept to finished products, and maintaining a healthy work-life balance. She dives into the intricacies of animation, navigating client feedback, and the importance of collaboration in achieving a desired outcome. Roz also sheds light on the challenges faced by creative professionals in today's evolving landscape, with the rise of simple and cost-effective tools. She discusses the need to continuously learn and adapt to emerging technologies, emphasizing the importance of investing in oneself through courses and personal projects. As an illustrator, Roz also reveals her passion for environmental and wildlife causes, donating 100% of her artist profits to organizations like the Eden Reforestation Project and the Defenders of Wildlife. So, get ready to gain insights from an experienced motion graphics animator, and let's get creative. To kind of jump in here, I just want to ask you, how you got started with animation and motion graphics, and where you came from, and what are you doing now?
Okay, so if you asked me, let's say 20 years ago, if I would be doing animation, I certainly would have said, no, I don't think so. Because actually, when I was a kid, I always wanted to be involved with National Geographic because I love nature. And I come from quite a creative family that's a family of artists, I guess, either involved with music or art or acting. And so I've always been in a creative mindset, I guess. And I used to entertain myself as a kid, writing little stories and drawing little doodles and things like that. But I always saw myself, even when I was in high school, kind of doing video work for some kind of nature channel, specifically National Geographic.
Yeah.
I was obsessed with it. But, I didn't get into that film school, and I ended up studying media instead. And then after I finished studying, I went into video, and I was really lucky enough to get a job with this event and music recording studio. So my job was to do the video editing. And how I got in there is one of my strategies actually for getting work is when you're first starting out is to offer free services. So I went to them and I was like, hey, this is me. I'm just starting out. How about you guys hire me? I'll work for free for like a month or whatever. I can't remember how long it was. And then they were short of hands. So they're like, come on board. And then, of course, I proved my worth. And then I ended up working there for 2 years. So I did some like pretty big, notable projects with them. For example, this is terrible, but we did all the Camel cigarettes promotional work.
Oh, wow.
So it was like in that stage where they couldn't actually advertise on TV and things like that. Mm-hmm. So then instead they invested a ton of money into doing all these events. So then my job was to go with a camera because I was a camera operator first and do like the video recordings and stuff. And then I had to edit them and I had to interview people. So that was all like the first part of my journey with making videos. And then, of course, I came to Taiwan after 2 years and got into teaching. And I never gave up doing creative work. I was doing VJing and things like that on the side and like making little videos and still doing drawings. And, I never stopped being creative. It just wasn't getting paid for it. So after that, I went back to South Africa, and for about over 4 years, I worked for another media company, but this one specialized in broadcasting. So we did television shows for mostly SuperSport channel, and we would do things like sports documentaries. So, for example, we did the Oxbow Longboarding Championships. And then this is where I learned a ton of skills, because the company that I worked for was relatively small and they had thin pockets. And they often would hire a smaller crew. They would outsource a lot of the work, and they would have onboard people like me. And although my job was typically being the video production manager, I ended up doing all kinds of stuff. Like I did logistics, which involved like recording all of the timesheets. I even made quotes for the clients and did client liaison. I directed the camera crews and all kinds of things. But, during this job, I realized that I'm definitely a studio person. So I realized through this time that I prefer doing work in the studio, being creative, and I'm not such a field worker. So that's definitely shifted me off on my way to realizing that if I want to continue in this field, I'm definitely going to be focusing on studio work. And, at this time, I was already doing some motion graphics. It was mostly like title animations and things like that. And then I realized that I just love doing graphic design, and I love doing title animations, and why not learn more? So then after this, I decided to do a pretty intense course with School of Motion, and I learned more than I had ever learned before. And that's where I really started animating, and I'm always learning more, and that's how it all started. So, yeah.
All right, cool. Yeah, I like a couple of things that you said. If I can just try to backtrack and recall those things, like whenever you were first starting, you offered some services for free, and I'd say that's a great strategy for people that do have kind of that drive and they have time that they can spend doing those types of things. You said you didn't realize like how much time exactly that was. It's nice that in your mind, you kind of set a deadline on that so that you would transition out of it eventually, so they didn't take advantage of you. So I think that was really smart and a good strategy for people that are also looking to pick up something new, start a new career, a new path, whatever you want to do. And then working in a smaller company, you also mentioned, can be really great because you can wear a bunch of different hats and you can kind of explore what might fit you best. And that's how you've basically found that studio work, the doing stuff, kind of outside of the field is really where you shone and you thrived. So you just went further into that and you dug in with the School of Motion. And how did you come about that school, by the way? Do you remember how that came into your site?
I think a friend recommended it to me, and there's a friend of mine back home in South Africa that started working for an agency, and I noticed a huge improvement in his work. And I asked him what was his strategy, and he told me that he actually did this intensive course with School of Motion. So I decided it's pretty expensive, and you have to take some time off to do it. So yeah, I dedicated some time and money to doing that, and I hope to keep doing them because there's quite a lot of courses. One thing I want to say is another more practical reason why I changed is because I realized that, with all creative things, it's very fluid. And between software and between technology evolving, that sometimes we have to change. So video, you can download any kind of video editing app, and there's free ones. There's ones for like $10 a month. And you can actually make pretty cool material, content material with these really simple and cost-effective apps. So if you wouldn't really be able to get a career in that, because now there's like so many video editors and it's become like available to the ordinary consumer. And although obviously there's more skill involved, making something more advanced, I guess. So that's a practical reason why I also decided to change to animation, because there's not a lot of animators out there. And it kind of just also embodies the two things that I like, which is drawing and being in the studio, right?
I know that you said you studied and kind of dug more into the motion graphics because you figured that specialization is going to get you, I guess, higher paying jobs or more opportunities because there are fewer people. You're competing against fewer people doing that, and that sounds great. And can you tell me any of the projects that you've worked on recently that you're really proud of, something that represents your work?
Sure. So another reason why I started animating is because I realized that you can tell stories. And I think it was Bill Hicks. I can't remember if it was him, but I remember watching one of his comedy shows and he was just like, advertising is Satan's baby or something like that.
Yeah, he has a very off-putting to some, but hilarious to others type of personality.
Yeah. And I just thought, oh my goodness, that he's totally right. A lot of advertising, it has a lot of agenda. But then I realized that you can actually use marketing positively. And I realized there's a lot of people that are using their creative skills to send positive messages. So you can use it for activism and you can use it for better things than making people want to buy something.
Sure.
Yeah.
We hope people will put their creative efforts into things that they actually can get behind.
So for the last 2 years since I've been freelancing, I've really been trying to get into working with companies that really want to make change, whether it's with social innovation or environmental education or anything like that. So I was really, really happy to get a call from one of my friends that as well. It was Kelly, and she was the project manager for this cool ed tech company that is doing educational interactive videos, which are focusing on the SDGs, which are the Sustainable Development Goals from the UN. And they are going to the Philippines and they're recording and documenting all these case studies of indigenous groups and local communities. And they're turning this footage into these awesome, like, interactive lessons for students around the globe to learn about sustainability and the challenges that these guys face every day. And she gave me a call and she sent me a little video example. And she's like, we're looking for someone to make instructional videos for the students. Are you interested? And I was like, yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. And to get here for myself, I went back to that same strategy I used. I made free content for a company, and actually Craig helped me. He did the sound for a company here in Taiwan that does environmental promotion. They plant trees, they promote vegetarianism, they do all kinds of stuff. They're called TOAF. I have forgotten what it stands for, to be honest.
Okay. We'll look it up and I'll put it in the notes to the episode.
Sure. So Craig actually helped me because we actually collaborated with those. So that was fun. And, I used those as examples to get this job.
Nice. Yeah. Okay. So that basically the portfolio that you were presenting, you added that material in there, and that was just stuff that you had done just to kind of practice your skills and then contribute to a company that you could actually get behind.
Exactly. And the company was super appreciative because they were trying to reach their foreign audience. So they were really grateful to have some marketing stuff to reach people that speak English.
In regards to the project with MAD, could you tell me something about that process? As in, after they said, all right, Roz, we'd want to start working on this project. What was kind of the steps or the process that they went through or that you went through with them Could you go through that in a little bit of detail?
Okay, so the first thing was a meeting. It is a startup company, and things were a bit chaotic for the first month or two. I think mostly because they had never made motion graphics videos before. So although they originally hired me as the motion graphic animator, I soon became also the consultant and also the person who helped them with the script writing. And I think everybody in the team, it was a team of over 20 people, I think. Some of the roles were crossing over. So the steps were, I had a meeting with them and tried to, which you should always do, you should always try and get as much information as you can. By doing research on your own about the company, about their goals, their brand guide, of course. Usually they'll give that to you. And then in the meeting itself, try and fill in the gaps and ask as many questions as you can so that you can quote appropriately. And it's a work in progress. I must say that I messed up a little bit the first round, but then the second contract that I signed with them was much better because I had learned from my mistakes. So after that, after we've had the meeting and we've come up with the idea, then it is the script writing, which they did. And then they sent me the script, and then I had to go through the script and just suggest changes because they can't think of it in a visual way. So I had to help them think that way. So we made an extra column on the script, and then that column is used for visual ideas. And that is key in doing any kind of video or motion graphics project. You must have the visual ideas in place first, and then they also started helping along with that. They started thinking more in a visual way, which saved a lot of time in the end. The second round that we worked together went much more smoothly. Okay, so after the script is done, then is the voice recording, and our friend Kelly did the voiceover. Also, if I had suggestions or anybody else did. Remember, something that I forgot to mention is between each step, it's very important that the client must approve each step. Because as soon as you go on to the next step and they haven't approved the one before, then later on in the project, you're going to be coming back to fix that one thing in the script, and it's going to just send you completely backwards. And that happened a few times. It's a reoccurring problem, I must say. So to avoid that, I'll tell you about that a little bit later, actually. Okay, so after the voiceover, then I will make what we call the style frame boards. So it's something like a storyboard, but it is actually the same. What you see is what you get. So it's like the visual representation of the project. So it's also very important for the client at this point to say, this is exactly what I want it to look like, etc. But in this particular project in MAD, I was working with a graphics designer. So the graphic designer actually designed a lot of the characters and the icons and things like that. And I put them together in the scene. And that's when things got a little bit wonky because at one point we didn't know whose role was to make the scenes. And the graphic designer wasn't listening to the project manager at some points. And there was some confusion with the roles. So we had to have a meeting about it and like reestablish who's doing what role is whose. And then, it ended up working out. So that was one of the things that we had to work on as a team, to making sure that everybody's role is clear. Okay, so then after we have the style frames in place and they've been approved, don't forget that essential step, then the animation starts. And this is the heavy duty stuff. So, it takes a long time to animate things. So you really, really want to make sure that all the steps before have been taken care of. And it happened where, because some of the people doing the scripts were also the CEOs of the company. So they had like multiple things that they were doing and they got a little bit too chaotic, I'm sure. There were people that were like getting sick and they didn't have enough rest and things like that. So the time management for the first round was a little bit upside down, but that improved. So after the animation, then we kind of go through everything as a team. It gets sent off to the product team first. And then we have like kind of a review document, and then each person has to write a review. If there's a scene, they need to write the time code, and adjacent to that, what they suggest should be changed. And then at the end of the day, the project manager decides whether it's worth being changed or not. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So there you said the request sheet was basically just a spreadsheet that was kind of like requesting a task from another person working in the team.
Exactly. And then I would write the date when I need it by, and then he would basically tell me if that's possible or not. And then he would write the estimated time delivery date and things like that. So that's kind of how we worked. It was quite efficient, actually.
I like that idea. It's got some accountability there. The project manager can see exactly when it was.
The project manager would basically check up that we're both doing that.
Nice. Yeah, I know some people use like things like Trello, where it's more like laid out in boards, and then it's like a little card that comes up. But same idea with the spreadsheet, right? We don't need all these complicated tools to do most of the things that we need to do, right? You can just use documents, you can use spreadsheets, and then the required tools that you need for the creative work, right? Whatever we're all comfortable with.
Yeah, because before you know it, you're spending a ton of money on apps. Okay. And then again, in the beginning, there were a couple of videos that we had to go back and change the whole thing. So just because of like a couple of lines that they didn't like them in the script. In fact, the first course that we ever did, because the brand guide that we were using was the old brand guide, so that was unclear. And then also they hadn't written scripts before, so the scripts were not good enough, and they decided to scrap the whole of the first course, and we redid it. But at the end of the day, I got paid twice, so I'm not complaining.
Yeah, sure. It just increases the budget of the project, and that's the project manager's job to decide if it's worth it.
Exactly. So then the second time we did everything, it went so much more smoothly. Everyone kind of knew their roles. Communication-wise, what do we use to communicate? We use an app called Slack. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. It's extremely useful, but even that can get really chaotic if you don't have certain guidelines, and rules that you have in place with your employees. Again, that's the project manager that's taking care of that. Then we also used Loom Video a lot because so what ended up happening is I had to help educate the clients on what I actually just mentioned before, the steps of creating a video. So I created a document. Actually, Craig and I had one from our previous projects for the I Explainer videos. I created a document which they circulated in the product team and beyond. And then also I made a Loom video to go along with that. And then I suggest that whenever you get a client, you should really carefully go through the steps with them so that they understand, because you can, number one, people don't understand what you're doing and they think it's a lot more simple than it actually is. And that's definitely a reoccurring problem. I'm sure every creator in whatever field you are has the same problem. So it's kind of your job to educate the client on what you're actually doing and how much time is involved. So personally, I actually used something for my own time management. I used something called a project workflow sheet, which I'm actually going to give to Craig, and you guys are welcome to use it. And it not only helps me to realistically kind of know how much time each project is going to take me, it helps me to do my schedule, and then I can actually quote more appropriately. So when I first started freelancing, it was incredibly difficult for me to work out how much I should be charging clients. And, that's still a work in progress. But the sheet kind of helps me realize how much work is involved. And you also have to be very clear to the clients on what is it that they are looking for and explain to them that certain things cost more money. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to try to tease apart a few of those things.
Sorry, I just went on there forever.
Well, it's a big endeavor. I don't think if you haven't made any type of course or you've never put this type of extended type of content, particularly with that involve motion graphics and whatnot together, you really have no idea what it's like. So it really is crucial, and that's why I'm glad that you're gonna share that document that also helps freelancers can kind of budget their time, but it can also help the other side, the person that's hiring them, to understand, maybe just to see that piece by piece, this is what needs to be done. And it's so critical. Using a tool like Loom, you can go through your steps, maybe the tools you're using, and show some examples of what you have to do in each step of the way. This can help communicate more clearly the time costs that's going to happen. And then, having that review period that you said in between each step, to make sure that this has been approved, you're okay with this design, the script or whatever it is in a good place, so that we can go on to the next phase, so that, at the end, you try your best, even though it's going to happen at some point, probably. You try your best to avoid going back and having to rework a lot of material and spend a lot of extra money on that project. And I can sympathize with everything you just said, for sure. Trying to take on just music projects, not even involving video. Yeah, there's no way that you can know all of these steps involved to create any kind of product if you've never done it before. And that's kind of what you jumped into, is what it sounds like. And then you said it worked out in the end, I guess it keeps getting better. And that's great, because the team's still in place, or a majority of the team's still in place. There's some more documents that are there that can be used. So some maybe standard operating procedure type of things, or at least just the knowledge base between the people working on the project. They understand what everybody's supposed to do and what they don't have to do, more importantly, maybe.
We also had this, which was very helpful. Each person in the product team had something called a request form, which is a Google spreadsheet. And basically the project manager will put your task on there. And then you have to give estimated date on delivery date. And then there's like another column saying if you're waiting for work from somebody else, like from the graphic designer and stuff. And then she will or he will kind of look at those documents and just follow up with people to make sure that they get to those deadline dates. So that's the steps that I mentioned were for that particular project. But if you don't mind, I want to actually read the general steps that I would use for any project, because there was a part in the beginning that I left out, which we didn't do with this project because there simply wasn't enough time. But something that I think is really important is creating a mood board. So I don't know if you guys know what mood boards are, but basically you just go on. It's actually quite fun. It's like kind of like house hunting or something. And you go onto the internet and you just look for associations of this idea that you've come up with. And a lot of people use Pinterest, which I'm not personally a fan of. Let me see. What are the other things people use? There's one that is a cross-platform tool, which means like multiple people can use it. And it's called Envision. Okay. And personally, I use Canva to design the mood board, because sometimes clients want to see the mood board because they want to be involved in every single step. And it can also help them to envision their own idea, right? Because you're the one that's helping them along. For collections, people use Pinterest, Go Mood Board, Envision, okay? And for the actual design of the mood board to show the client, if that's what you're going to be doing, I would use Canva. And the new one is Adobe Express, which has an AI in it, which is very helpful. And you can just chop up stuff very quickly and make it look great. Yeah.
And these tools are kind of like a mind map type of thing, or is it just like images and text, like just randomly placed on a kind of whiteboard area?
It depends what you want to do. But some of these tools actually involve having like, you can put notations down, you can put timelines down and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, which I think is really helpful. I know that we like to plan things. Craig got me into planning a lot more. Another thing that in MAD that we didn't do, which is typically common to do, is after designing the style frames. So you got your, like, let's just say storyboards, because everybody knows that term. So once you got your storyboards and the voiceover, it's very common to make a animatic. So it's just the still frames unanimated with the voiceover. And that's very helpful sometimes, just because when you see it like that, you realize if things are going to work or not.
Yeah, you can hear the pacing of it. You can see a visual representation, even though it may not be moving at that point. And you get the flow of something more than just a still image with text, I'm sure. Yeah. And
then something that I do personally, I know a lot of animators do it as well, but not for this kind of project, more for creative things, is I have a little drawing book that I carry around with me. And then I actually plan out the animation like that. So I'll draw the little circle that's going to move that way, and then the thing's going to pop out there, just to kind of like map it out in my own mind. Super rough. You're not going to be showing anyone that sketchbook for sure.
Right. Well, it might be cool. I'm sure I would be interested in looking at that, but it reminds me of stuff I'm learning now. I'm just beginning to dip my toe in like the coding world, and I'm learning how to write pseudocode. And pseudocode is like far removed from actual code, but it's doing the same thing in text form. You're just trying to speak out or like write out what you're trying to accomplish with the code. So it's exactly the same thing that you're doing with your sketchbook. And I'm sure any artist, if you're a visual artist, you probably have a sketchbook that you just jot down ideas. Just like if you're a musician, you're probably recording things on your phone as they come to you, right? So everybody does a form of this type of note-taking in your own way.
Yeah, I remember listening to a podcast about the scientist that made the light boat sailing through space. And he said that the time where he got his best ideas, he was always in the shower. I'm sure we can all relate.
Yeah, I actually talked about this with another one of the guests, really? Travis McDonald. We had this similar kind of thing. We were talking about the moments when you're not really thinking so hard about something are the ones where you get the most insights.
I think it's also when you have less noise around you. Because, he has a family and stuff. So he's probably away from his kids. He's in the shower. The water must be quite hypnotic. But anyway, so what his wife did is she actually got him a waterproof notepad. So he writes all of his amazing, I think he actually came up with the idea for the light sail in the shower.
I've heard about people that will write on the tiling of their showers, cool. Like just have a marker there so they can do the similar type of thing. So yeah, that's a great idea. I mean, that's just a hack right there, I guess, to use one of those hacky words. But yeah, wherever
what do you do? Do you record yourself on the phone?
Yeah, I tend to take notes with audio. So I'll just I'll drop a quick audio note to myself, and I probably don't review them enough. But maybe one of these days I do use one tool called Otter, but there are a few tools out there that can actually transcribe the audio into text.
I've seen that. Yes. Yeah, that's helpful.
Look up one of those, and that way you can search through the information really quickly to try to find that idea that you had.
Unfortunately, I get most of my ideas while I'm riding my scooter for some reason.
Yeah, that's a little bit tricky.
Yeah, you can't do anything. They just kind of come in and out. There's so many amazing ideas I've come up with and then just forgotten to record them after. There have been one or two times where the idea was good and I actually pulled over and just wrote it down quickly, but that doesn't really happen often.
And now for a quick word from my sponsor, me. Are you a creative genius and entrepreneur? Well, listen up because this message is for you. Are you tired of spending countless hours struggling to find the right sound or asking your virtual assistant to come up with something else? Let me be your audio specialist extraordinaire. With refined taste and a keen focus on project management, sound design, and post-production services, I'll take your audio to the next level. Imagine having a dedicated expert by your side, ensuring that every moment with sound is perfectly balanced. From creating captivating podcasts to producing moving music, let me be your secret weapon for professional-grade results. Don't miss out on the opportunity to make your audio dreams a reality. Visit my website at ideafield.pro or drop me an email at dream@ideafield.pro to schedule a free consultation. We'll have a virtual coffee chat where we discuss your ideas, favorite styles, and maybe even your secret singing aspirations. Let's bring your audio dreams to life. Together, we'll create magic. Now, back to the episode with Roslynn Lemmer. Well, I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. So I know you've been working with many different people. You've worked with content creators, nonprofits, and media companies before. But in terms of collaboration, as a contract worker on various projects, how do you ensure efficient collaboration and effective communication? You mentioned Slack, but I know things can get lost. You mentioned that it's hard to keep things organized within Slack. And how do you just collaborate with people?
Okay, so I've been pretty lucky that most of the projects I've done, I've been shepherded. So I've either had a project manager that kind of shepherds us, or I've worked with a colleague that does like most of the client liaison and things like that. But when it comes to collaboration, I'm often working closely with only one or two people. So then we'll collaborate by actually just talking face to face on Google Meets or whatever, or messaging each other or sending each other Loom videos.
And how often would you say you do that on some like larger project like you just worked on with Matt?
I would say that the graphic designer and I were in touch on a weekly basis. Yeah. But we mostly used text messaging in Slack. So we had our own little personal group in Slack with just him and I. And we would also leave notes on the Google documents that we were using to review each other's work and things like that. Also, I'm sure most design software has this. We only use Adobe, so I'm not sure of the other ones. It's incorporated into the software. So when he did a design, then I can actually just review it within Adobe. Yeah, so I've got the design up or whatever, and then I can actually write some stuff there. Suggestions, etc. And then in terms of when I needed something, I would use that thing that I mentioned earlier called the request sheet. So I would pop onto his request sheet and write, like, I need an icon for this, or I need whatever.
Whenever we're talking about content creation, we're talking about making a lot of different types of things, complicated things, which you're involved in. Are there any key steps that you like to follow that really make sure that everything's smooth beside the review steps that you mentioned, the storyboarding steps, anything that might give us more insight about where are the problems and how can we avoid those?
Again, I'm going to say the biggest problem is when the client doesn't know what they want. And then they keep chopping and changing stuff. And honestly, I can't specifically say because it's been in each step. Sometimes it's the script. Sometimes it is the way the animation looks, the style of it. And even though you've told the client or tried to explain to them how the process works, they don't seem to get it sometimes. And then they'll go back and change things. So again, the only thing I can suggest is making it clear to the client that it's going to cost them more money. That seems to work. That if they're going to change their minds in a step that has been approved already, and you have to go back and change things, then they're going to have to pay. So before, when I first started out, I was doing reviews for free. Now, for the first review of whatever it is, I charge 50%, and then the fee gets higher and higher as we go. So that seems to solve the problem pretty quickly. Yeah.
I see. So basically, what I would call, you're calling it a review. I think I would typically refer to it as a revision, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's when you have to go back and change something off of something that you've already created based on something they suggested, most likely, or approved. Yeah. And so other than the pricing that you're talking about here, where you're making the client consider it more thoroughly before going back and making a change to something because it will cost them more money. Is there any other things that you've encountered with the teams as far as executing their plans that have kind of cost more time, more effort on anybody's part? Have there been any miscommunications or things like this?
Yes, I have had some miscommunications with some of my co-workers, particularly the graphic designer. Once I had an issue where because they were a beginner designer and they had no experience in making content for motion graphics. And there's a certain way that the file should be delivered. So I made a Loom video and I actually showed him how to do it. But he still kept on messing it up. So I found a different solution, which is great for all of you guys out there. It's a plugin called Overlord. And you can use any Illustrator file and just import the file into each element of the design into After Effects without any problems. So like imagine you've got your Illustrator app open and you want just that one little circle there. You literally just click on it and there's the Overlord is an extra window now. And then you click one button and it immediately transports to After Effects in the perfect format instead of bothering with designers not knowing what they're doing.
Amazing.
It's a lovely tool.
People are creating tools to solve these problems that we're having with this kind of strange issue where they just would have delivered the file in the right place to begin with. It wouldn't be an issue. But I think everybody's found themselves in that type of situation from time to time. I know just working in audio, people have lost project files. So they're only left with the kind of last mix that they had, and then they're giving it to the next engineer, and they're like, can you help me get rid of this or, change this? And it's like, well, that's going to be very, very tricky because it's all together now in a file, just like I'm sure you're dealing with. But yeah, there's some great tools out there if you dig, like the one you just mentioned. So we'll definitely put a link. We'll try to get a link to that if you're an Illustrator user or After Effects
Yeah, it's
user.
cross-platform. It's very, very helpful.
Awesome. So I know we've just been talking about your kind of professional life, a majority of the time here, and all the tools that you're using, how you're communicating with the team, and all the challenges that we all come across. But I'm curious now about how you balance your professional commitments and personal life, and how do you maintain this healthy work-life balance while pursuing the things that you're really passionate about, like you're talking about sustainability, you're passionate about the environment, and I know that you also do some illustration as well, on top of doing multiple other things for income, as freelancing and teaching.
Well, again, it's another work in progress. I think you have to just be realistic and make limitations for yourself. And I assign periods of time to each thing per day. And I think linking them to one particular habit. For example, I teach in the mornings, as Craig calls it, the golden handcuffs. So I teach in the mornings, and that kind of like sets things up. So that sets up the rest of my schedule for me already. So I've got the teaching in the morning, and then I assign different periods of the day to do certain things. So I have a period of the day where I do freelancing. I have a period of the day where I do communications. I have a period of the day where I'm doing like course learning. Always learn more, guys. And you just assign things that are the focus of your life, and you assign periods of time to that. It sounds pretty simple, but it's not that easy to maintain sometimes. In terms of, people can get anxious and overworked, especially when you have deadlines looming and there's, a lot of pressure involved in the creative industry. And I think doing some meditation, daily meditation, is essential, even if it's only 5 minutes. There's a lot of apps out there. There's a lot of even free YouTube videos and stuff. I personally use Headspace. I'm sure there's a lot of people that use it. And I think it's helpful, especially when you're in a rush and you tend to get anxious, which I certainly do. Doing 5 or 10 minutes of meditations can really, really help. Another strange thing is when you're like in a block and you're feeling super stressed out, taking a nap. I know it sounds super weird, but it really works. If you're feeling tired and overstressed, you've got deadlines looming, all that kind of thing, you kind of at a block on how to do something, whether it's technical thing or a creative thing. I find having a little sleep, and then it kind of like sort of remixes and defrags your brain, and then you're ready to go when you wake up. It always helps me. I don't know about you.
Oh man, sleep is really high on my priority list for sure. Me and my partner, we try to get 7 to 8 hours a night if we can. But take naps. I actually took a nap earlier today because I woke up ridiculously early.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. Sleep is a magic pill in a lot of ways. What about, would you say like you practice any kind of exercise?
Sure. So actually, Craig and I were doing some exercise together to hold each other accountable. And now we're kind of doing it on our own. So I'm doing it with my partner at the moment. And again, it's assigning a time and sticking to it. Because as soon as you start chopping and changing the schedule, then it's going to be more and more difficult to actually do whatever it is that you're supposed to be doing. So I think that assigning a time and getting there is one step, 2 steps.
Nice.
2 big steps.
Well, yeah, it's a challenge. It's always a tricky balance. What do you think about the ability to be like flexible with that type of block scheduling? I hear a lot of people talk about this type of block scheduling, and I know for me sometimes it's really challenging to move things around or just allow myself to not quite get to a block or have to put off things. How do you deal with that?
For me, it's easy to stick with it because I already have things that can't really be changed. For example, working in the morning, and I have 2 dogs and I have to walk them at a certain time. So that's kind of where I get to exercise not only my body, but also my mind and my eyes. I recently developed some eye problems, so I've been actively trying to spend more time outside. So having those slots in the day are actually helping me to keep the other blocks in place. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so they rarely move around for you.
They rarely move around. But, sometimes, for example, one of our friends is in the hospital at the moment. I've been trying to go there every now and then. So I have been moving blocks around. But I think you need to have enough free time somewhere in your schedule that you're able to mix it around with that, I guess. So I would typically not be working like after 8. But I am sometimes willing to change that around. So, for example, I will switch the hospital time to the working time, and then I'll do the thing in the evening, which I wouldn't typically do like that. You got to be flexible. You can't be rigid in everything because this is a fluid industry. It's going to be changing, and you got to adapt and be fluid with it.
Yeah, everything these days is basically changing so quickly. So I agree with that wholeheartedly. I just want to talk real briefly about your graphic design, the things that you're putting out as Baobab Ink, I believe. Forgive me if I'm saying that incorrectly.
No, that's right. The Baobab tree.
The Baobab tree. And it's a really cool tree. If you haven't seen one of these trees, you should definitely look it up. And then,
some of them are older than the Egyptian times.
That's ridiculous. But anyway, so... can you just speak really quickly about that initiative?
Okay, it was actually an idea from my friend Ryan Jones, who does the same thing. So he spends a ton of time doing all of this marketing and working for an agency. And, as a creative person or as creators, we're always conforming to someone else's idea of creativity. So I think it's a good exercise to still do little sideline projects of your own. Or else, you need to inspire yourself. So one of the things I like to do, but I don't necessarily make money from it, is doing a little bit of illustration work. So I decided to put my art on T-shirts. And then I give 100% donation of my artist profits to the Eden Reforestation Project and also the Defenders of Wildlife, which are 2 organizations I really care about. And then not only am I... doing something for the environment and for wildlife, I'm also exercising my creative ability and learning more things.
Yeah, I love that about you, Raj. You're always experimenting. You're always trying new things, trying new tools, trying to take on new responsibilities and, just putting yourself out there. I think that's really important, and everybody can learn a lot from you about that.
Thank you. I think I learned from the best, and he's sitting next to me.
Well, I appreciate that. Is there any last maybe pieces of advice, from your positive or negative experiences that you'd like to leave the listeners with, either as artists or as teams who are looking to begin a new project or maybe improve on their current workflow?
Yeah, there is actually something I want to say is so important, is just to be inspired and keep looking, watching, reading, immersing yourself in other people's work. So I make some time every week to kind of go on the other platforms, either listening to podcasts or checking out new animations. And some of the places I like to go on, Stash. So this is like a curation of motion design, animation, video, visual effects from most of the top designers out there. And another one is called the Inspiration Grid, which by the title, I think, explains itself. So it's just got lots of different artwork on there that can inspire you. And, just walking around, I have an app it's for free. It's called Adobe Capture. And then whenever you see like a color or a pattern or something that somebody's done that you like, even like the pattern on a leaf, something in nature, a sound you hear, whatever, you just record it with that app. So don't only be inspired by other people, but be inspired by things around you. And just keep trying, keep learning, and just keep being inspired. And surround yourself with people that are as hardworking and as creative as yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, the community you're with, your environment that you're in, and using tools that you have at your disposal to, capture those things, record them, and try to put them into some kind of creative outlet, which you've paired beautifully, donating to charity and inspiring yourself and others. And then working in teams and sharing all your insights today. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on the show.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Roz. And that wraps up my conversation with Roslynn Lemmer on this episode of Field Talk. It was such a pleasure hanging with her and hearing her insights and experiences in the creative industry, from the importance of continuous learning and taking courses to adapting and exploring different roles. There were so many valuable takeaways from this conversation. Here are my 3 favorite action items. Number 1, invest in continuous learning and professional development. Like Roz, recognize the importance of staying updated with evolving technology and industry trends. Enroll in relevant courses or workshops to expand your skill set and improve your work. And seek out online courses such as School of Motion or other education platforms to enhance your knowledge and stay competitive in your field. Number 2, prioritize effective communication and collaboration. Clearly define roles and responsibilities within your projects or teams to avoid confusion and conflicts. Regularly communicate with your collaborators, clients, or team members to align expectations and address any concerns or issues that might arise. Embrace feedback and actively participate in the feedback loop, providing constructive suggestions and incorporating feedback into your work. And number 3, support causes and give back through your creative work. Follow Roz's example and find ways to use your creative skills to contribute to causes you care about. Whether it's donating a percentage of your profits, collaborating with nonprofits, or creating awareness through your work, find opportunities to make a positive impact. Use your platforms to raise awareness and advocate for social or environmental issues that align with your values. Again, those 3 things were: embrace continuous learning from courses to new technologies and never stop learning. Clarify roles for effective communication and collaboration to avoid confusion and issues. And give back through your creative work and contribute to causes you care about to feel more fulfilled. Remember, these takeaways apply to professionals across various industries. Whether you're in the creative field or not, these insights can help guide your career growth and personal development. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to hear more discussions with industry experts, make sure to subscribe to Field Talk. And if you know someone who would enjoy and benefit from this episode, please share it with them. I'll be back with more valuable insights and discussions to help you navigate the professional world. Until then, keep exploring and stay creative.